until we get to item 3, if it's okay, I'll start the meeting. My name is Steve Mayo. I am town administrator, and welcome to the WCAT working group. And maybe if you go down and around the table, introduce everybody to say a little bit about yourself, 1 word, 2 words, and why you're here. So,
my name is Jim McDermott. I am the most recent executive director of WCAT, and I'm here to offer whatever information or insight I might have into the situation.
I'm Corey. I'm a volunteer at WCAT. Been a volunteer for about 3 years.
Mike McLean, the vice chair currently of the town council, and member of this group. Glad to be here.
I'm William Redding. I got sent here from the Cable Advisory Committee. Yeah, this sounds like a fun group for figuring out funding and all this good.
So you drew the short straw.
I volunteered.
David Watts Jr., former board member and president of WCAT. Currently, I'm an independent filmmaker, photographer, and historian, and here primarily because of the background that I know about CAT.
Amy Forsyth, I am a member of Finance Committee, and I also volunteer for this.
Thank you.
I'm Paul Norman. I'm a current board member. I'm actually the treasurer for WCAT. I'm a CPA, and I will hopefully provide financial information, questions, answer that. The information that was sent out by Steve before the meeting was information I prepared.
thank you, Paul. Kevin?
Kevin Gill, town accountant for the town of Wakefield, and I'm a volunteer to the committee.
You were volunteered, is that what you said?
Yes, I did volunteer.
Oh, you did volunteer. Thank you for lying. So in any event, the town council wanted to set up a working group to really look into how do we make sure we maintain the gem that WCAT is, and the information and the process and the transparency it provides to the citizens of Wakefield and beyond, and in a sustainable way, because things have changed in the cable industry, and there is perhaps an income problem, perhaps a revenue problem, and I think the town council set this up to really look this group to look at all issues here and see what we can do to make sure we maintain this in the most cost-effective way we can. I think that's a fair statement.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. No group can function well without a chair and a vice chair. I will say that I am a candidate for neither. However, I will do the minutes and set the agenda. I will be the scribe for the meeting. Secretary for no pay. There'll be no stipend involved.
It's the toughest job, so I'll give you a lot of credit
Okay.
for taking that one.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if anybody wants to be chair, would like to be chair, would consider being chair.
I'm going to withdraw my interest mainly because of my role as a board member and treasurer of WCAT. I don't want to be in a position where I'm chairing the committee that addresses funding issues.
Okay. Makes sense.
I mean, I will say that I'm probably the only one here who doesn't have a foot in either camp. I'm not a member of WCAT. I'm an independent media person. I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
I think it makes you a good candidate. But I don't want to speak for you.
Second.
If someone wants to make a motion, that would be
Would you be amenable to a motion?
If somebody wants to make a motion, that's fine.
Okay, I would move that we nominate David Watts Jr. as chair of this working group.
I would say.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
You didn't vote.
I don't vote for myself.
Yeah. If it's 3-3 and there's 7 people, you do.
That,
So.
but there wasn't a tie, so.
Okay.
I did once just to make sure I got one.
Before I turn it over to the chair to conduct the rest of the meeting, I just would remind the board members, if they haven't been sworn in, to make sure you do get sworn in at the town clerk's office. If you haven't acknowledged receipt of the handbook for the committee, please do that. If you haven't taken your ethics training, please do that, okay? And I think a lot of you have.
Do those of us that have been sworn have to get sworn in?
You have to get
again?
sworn in again for this committee, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not a separate handbook though, right?
No, handbook's the same, yeah. Yeah, okay. Go ahead,
Okay,
you have the agenda, you do, perfect. Yeah.
all right. I believe we're on item 4.
Item 3, maybe, Mr. Chairman, maybe a vice chair? Yes.
Good point. Is there anyone who'd like to be vice chair?
I nominate Mike McLean as vice chair.
Have I a
I'm
second?
already a vice chair.
I know, that's how you're used to,
See?
you're used to the role.
You already have the training and experience.
Okay.
Have I a second?
I'll second that because I think it's good to have someone from town council. I know you get a million things to do, but it'd be great.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, Mike, you have it. Okay, let's go on to item 4, status of income stream legislation. That one's kind of a vexed subject.
So I'll just give you the quick, I know everybody got that in the package from Sherry. So there's a couple of things that are going on nationally that are somewhat concerning, but the streaming legislation specifically has had a public hearing. The committee that's looking at it, of the 18 members of the committee, more than half have sponsored or co-sponsored the legislation. The public hearing basically went around, as might be expected. The streaming companies are anti-streaming because one, they don't want to have to give up financial information is one thing. So it's stuck in committee right now, and as printed out and what was sent out, those bills have to be released by committee by February the 7th, or we start over for the most part. Either get assigned to a committee, which is like starting over no matter what, or they get out of committee, it was not to pass or not to pass. So it's just hard to tell. If you had a chance to look, I think there was an article in the Globe on November the 30th about the lack of activity on Beacon Hill this session. This is not to cast aspersions on any party one way or the other, but you know, phenomenal lack of activity on Beacon Hill for any bills. So it's unlikely, I think, that I mean, if you can move that, it'd be great. But right now, it would appear that although there's almost half the legislators have sponsored or co-sponsored, it just doesn't seem like there's any impetus to move this bill or many other bills for that matter. So
Which is essentially what happened in the last session.
this would be the
It got stuck and then it just died at the end of the
This would
session.
be the third session
Yeah.
and been refiled each time. So
Do we know if other states have been successful in passing this similar type of legislation?
different types of legislation. Video producers, if you will, can be streamers. One of the things that's important to note is by far, Massachusetts has the most independent cable access stations by miles. I think we have, out of 351 communities, I think there's 264 cable access stations. Some of those stations like Gloucester represent 4 towns. And there are a couple like that. Plymouth. But you look at other states, California has less than 50. New York doesn't have many. So it's really as important to us, although states are looking at it. And everything gets talked about as it's a tax, even in the public hearing. Even the members of the committee were saying this is just going to be a tax on the subscribers to the streaming services. Yep, it is going to be. They don't have to pass those costs along. You know they're going to. But if you look at your cable bill, I don't know, it's probably $5 a month or less for cable systems, so it's
Right.
not a lot of money. Do a lot of good work based.
The franchise fee has historically been the way that access media has been financed in America from the beginning of cable. And although the companies, particularly Verizon, have fought tooth and nail to get rid of it, it's never been a cost on their business. It's always been 100% pass through. And when I was on the board and when I was president, we went before the House and Senate joint committees 3 times to fight it back. Verizon was leading the charge. But that has been the traditional way of financing. The problem is so many people now are getting rid of cable that this is one of the reasons why the income stream has been cut so drastically in the last 4 or 5 years, Ian, or more.
Yeah, it's been what, about 21%?
We've seen, I know we've had a decline of about 3 to 4% a year. And Kevin does a nice schedule for the town councilors to review at the time of approving the board, an enterprise fund trend, which shows the historical cable access fees. And so, yeah, I know this, we continue to look at a 3 to 4% decline.
If I might just add to that, and kudos to Victor Santinello for, he was very helpful for me on one of these things, but I was curious, it was difficult to pin down, you helped me a lot, but still giving me the answer that I wanted, but it was close enough. When you think about all the building that's going on in Wakefield lately, and we're still not seeing an increase in cable subscribers. Or maybe we haven't seen the decrease we could have seen, but we're certainly not seeing with all those units that are being put into these condos and other places, you're not seeing cable subscriptions to the point where it's made a difference in the revenues.
No, because most people are going streaming these days, I understand.
Right.
And that part of the industry also has its challenges right now. It is not itself fulfilling the promises that they said they would when streaming started. And in fact, they're starting to eat each other and because they can't survive independently on their own.
Was there any estimate, if a version of the streaming bill locally went through, what that would generate for Wakefield? Was there any math?
I've never seen an estimate, and in my talks with Donald Wong, to my knowledge, he's never seen an estimate, so I don't think there's one floating around.
I'll give you a rough idea. So this is Rep Machina, who sponsored the House bills each time. So Jason Lewis has sponsored the Senate side all 3 years. Rep Machina has sponsored the House side. So in conjunction with national statistics and stuff that you got from Mass Access, who's the trade association for the local cable access stations, they tried to back into some figures. And so the way the streaming bill works is this. The proposal is it's 5% of gross revenues to the streamers. Of that, 20% would go to the state's general fund. 40% would go to the municipality that hosts the state that the stations are served by, and 40% would go to the stations themselves. However, it would be based on population. So when you look at the numbers, if you take the 20%, 40%, 40%, and you back into it on average, using the figures that they came up with for how much people pay nationally for streaming and so on and so forth, if Wakefield got the average amount based on these 2021 numbers, it would be just less than $100,000.
Which is
for
not
the
much.
station.
For the station, okay.
Which is not much.
It starts to backfill a little bit, but it's not a saving for sure. I mean, it certainly stems the flow.
So does that mean the municipality, the way they're doing it, 40, 40, 20, would also get 100?
Yes.
100.
Yes, yeah. But again, but it's average too, so obviously,
Right.
Boston's gonna get a whole lot more. The other thing that came up in the public hearing, among other things besides the issue about is it a tax on consumers or not, one of the things that was talked about that you could see might be, I don't know how they work it out, but the reason for the 20% for the general fund for the state was because of what was perceived to be the need for tracking the revenues like they do for the PEG fees. And as was pointed out at that by one of the sponsors, actually, that mechanism is already in place. So it's not like they're starting from scratch to get this information and then allocating it out. So if anything was going to be cut, it might be the 20% for the general fund and not for the cities and towns. But again, we're a long way from that. You got to get it out of study first, out of the committee first, and then hope that it gets worked out between the two bills. The Senate bill and the House bill are exactly the same. They all work the same.
Okay, but most concerning is the action going on at the federal level. Because this is where Verizon is trying very hard to succeed nationally, where it failed at the state level for decades.
Right. So on that point, I think it's HR 3557 on the national level. This was meant to be a bill that would promote broadband throughout the country. That would help to build out. It does none of that. I would like to tell you I read the whole bill. I didn't. It's about 100 pages. But what I will tell you is this, that at its core, it would allow the cable companies to give 120 days notice and walk away from all their contracts and still maintain their use of the public right of ways. So that bill got put into 3 committees and again in Congress, all on the House side, no corresponding Senate bill nationally. 2 of those committees at the chair's decision were moved along. We're not taking a position on it. The other committee forwarded to the House. It is in the House now. There are only there's less than 15 co-sponsors of that bill, all Republicans for what that's worth. And again, not pointing fingers, it just happens to be the way it is. But the fear is that it's out there now, and because of the problems in Congress with getting things done, that could be attached to another bill as a resolution and could go that way. So the point that was made on this was the way to stop it would be in the Rules Committee. The only good thing about the Rules Committee is none of us can lobby that group, but it's, I'm drawing a blank on the name now, but it's one of the Massachusetts state reps. It's the chairman of the Rules Committee, and they could kill it there before it even got to a vote at the House. But that would be,
Seth Moulton?
no, it's not.
It's not Seth?
No, it's one of the
Okay.
guys from the western part of the state. It's in my notes, but I can look it up, but it doesn't matter. But that's the issue, and that would obviously be national. So that just that would kill a lot.
That would kill everything.
So this is obviously a bill that's not pro-consumer at all, which is the way it was presented. But what it is pro-cable company. That would be enormous.
Now, am I right in understanding that municipalities would not get paid for the right of ways, period?
They wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Well, and added to the complexity, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but a significant number of poles in Wakefield are owned by Verizon, not by the MGLD.
And some are jointly owned too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just curious, Brian, has there ever been any movement on behalf of the Commonwealth itself to fund the communities?
There's been some talk that I don't know enough about it, but there has been some talk. Somebody put forth a bill that didn't go anywhere at the end of last session about trying to do something that way. I think it was a $10 million piece to be allocated out equally to everybody. But that didn't go.
$10 million across 300
Right,
doesn't go
Right.
very far,
right.
No.
It's true.
you know.
But it is not.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said, it's a streaming is a stopgap. It stops the bleeding a little bit, but it doesn't solve the long-term problems.
No. And that's the difficulty for community media in general, is how to stay relevant and how to continue to provide services. One thought that occurs to me, and Ian's predecessor, Ryan, and I had this conversation a number of times. WCAT is not a town department. It's a 501c3. Now, what does that mean? All you have to do is go to channel 2 and you'll see a 501c3 in action. WCAT legally is no different than WGBH. You know, and that may be part of the answer. I don't know. The board would have to take that up, but that would mean starting to act like WGBH as far as fundraising and grants and all of the things that come with it. Production fees for any productions that WCAT does. But its 501c3 status is also part of what has to be, I think, looked at here, because it isn't a town department. And so I'm not sure how that, Steve, would figure into town equations.
I should probably know this, but are there members of WCAT? Do people, because yes,
How many members are there currently in?
That I would have to go and look, well, a couple hundred currently,
I'd say many less than that.
and less than that.
Yeah. The membership fee is $50 a year.
Yeah.
And our membership income is one of the, I'll have that for you in a second, but yeah, you have individual members, and then there are also there's a membership, business membership as well.
I was going to say the previous ED but one instituted business membership levels, didn't he?
Yeah, we did, we tried. The problem that we face now, and it's not so much a problem, but it's a trend, is in the face of reduced interest by community members all over. A lot of stations, in effort to get people interested in going, are cutting memberships. In many cases, they're cutting them completely.
How are they surviving without memberships?
Don't know. They're cutting their staff, they're shortening their hours, they're doing less and less and less.
Which kind of kills the whole reason for community access.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just put this in perspective. Our membership income for 2023 was $5,200.
Yes.
We get $370,000 from franchise fees. We also have a category of donations. And those are just individuals in the community who want to make a contribution for the work that we're doing. That was about $4,000 last year. So we put the same number in for our budget. So you've got less than $10,000 is the category for membership and donations. We also have a corporate sponsorship program, of which the Savings Bank is our lead corporate sponsor. We do have, and that's about, yes, it ranges from 7,000 to 9,000 whether you count movies on the lake or not. So those are the things that are our income streams that are outside of what we're able to generate through our independent video production. We've been successful with that, and what we receive from the cable companies is franchise fee income.
The independent video production is kind of along the lines of a GBH type model.
And we've been very successful with an organization, Mass Partnership for Youth. It's a nonprofit. Ian has played a key role in creating videos for that really are used as their main product for teaching? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so what they have done, they are an organization that helps give accreditation to teachers. So they set up seminars and they set up trainings and things like that on key issues of the year for teachers to be able to get what is it, CMEs, I think they're called. And they do those. One of the things that they've gotten into in the past couple of years is to do both an in-person and an online training. Because of the difficulties of that, like we've all seen with the hybrid meetings that we have with town council and school committee, they tried to do it themselves and it didn't go well. Many times people couldn't hear each other or whatever. So in talking with Margie, she's like, she saw what we had done after the pandemic, and she's like, this is great. How did you do this? Can you tell me about it? And I'm like, I can do better than that. We can do it for you. And so she's like, that would be great. So she went to her board of directors and they allocated some of their funds for doing that. And they have had great success with it. So it's been a great partnership. They've had surveys that they put out to their attendees, and the attendees have said, yeah, it's so much better now. I actually feel like I'm part of the event in the meeting. And they've been nothing but happy about the whole thing. And then we've done a library series, so that you can just watch the video. We bring people into the studio and we do a full 1 hour seminar in the studio, and then they put it up on a live stream page under their umbrella.
So that's the video rental, or not rentals, but video.
Video service,
Bit of both.
yes.
Yeah. Bit of both.
Okay, what do we rent? What is rental income? 29,000, where does that?
That is the facility.
So
that is-
it's all under the same umbrella.
Okay.
It,
Just split up into a couple categories.
into a couple categories, yes.
Essentially, we split out any rental is the facility and any other stuff is us going places.
Right. There was a large non-financial asset donation. I don't want to get into anything that's not,
That's
it's private
$75,000.
information. Yeah.
So we have a in-kind contribution from the town of Wakefield for $75,000, which was determined at one point in time to be the fair value of the rent for this studio that we do not get charged for. So we have a $75,000 expense, non-cash, and then we have an in-kind contribution by the town of Wakefield to offset that $75,000.
So that's a wash.
That's a wash.
Okay.
Yes.
So if I might real quickly to your question about memberships, and this isn't directly relevant, but it gives you some sense of the business. So I mentioned Mass Access as the trade group. Of the 260 some odd stations, they have 119 members basically. So WCAT pays, basically your membership as a cable access station is based on your revenues, I believe, and it's tiered. And there's individual memberships as well. Starting next year, Mass Access is just gonna go across the board, $100, no matter individual, you could be Boston, you could be anybody you want, it's $100. And the goal is to say, people aren't taking out a membership in Mass Access because their revenues are declining. So they lose the base, so obviously, you're trying to make it up in volume, which is dangerous, but it's the same thing the stations are going through on individual levels with members as it is with Mass Access, trying to get enough money, so they can do what they have to do.
I will say that the efforts that we have done with the production, the paid productions essentially, has been great. The problem that we run into is the more of that we do, the less of the other stuff we can. Because it takes from the same labor pool and the same time pool as doing stuff for here. And we've had situations like that where we've had that thing, we're supposed to go and cover something for a paid stipend, and something else has come up and it's like, which one do we let go?
It's almost an easy one.
It's not easy because
Not to
our
me, it's
goal
not.
is to provide a valuable service to the community. That's what we're here for.
That's true.
And then we're just trying
Don't
to see
argue
what we
that
can do to
point.
supplement it.
But,
And
but at the same time, especially with revenues falling the way they are, Gloucester has redesigned themselves as 1623 Studios, and they now represent, I think, 4 communities. You know, and I don't know exactly what they're doing internally, but I have seen them around at different places and things doing whatever. You know, I don't know, some of the other biggies that used to be around were like Newton. I don't know what they're doing now. Because I've been completely out of this arena now for 11 years, so.
Well,
But
places like Plymouth also did that. They congregated with 5 other communities. And now
Right.
there's one station running, they're called basically a super station. And they're running 6 towns and municipalities with about 7 or 8 staff, I think.
yeah,
Maybe 15 if you include the part-timers.
yeah,
And it would make a difference too when your program was, you know, this probably wouldn't happen because it's, but if you look at something like, you know, you have a chance to do something outside and make some money for it. Or you have the Veterans Day ceremony, or Martin Luther King Day ceremony. I mean, the setup time and the preparation time for those things happens well in advance. Just for those programs that only last an hour, hour and a half at the most, there's probably 5 or 6 hours of setup and breakdown time, minimally, to do those things. So, but again, is that the one you want to walk away from? Probably not. You don't want to walk away from Veterans Day, even if you're gonna make more money going outside, because that's more community access.
We actually almost had that this coming weekend, because the Wreaths Across America event down at the cemetery, we were supposed to have a job going the same day. And we were actually going to end up having to withdraw from the Wreaths event because the other one was good, but thankfully the other one moved itself. So we now no longer have the conflict, but I was really worried about that because I didn't want to have to call Paul Cancelleri of the Veterans Board and say, I don't have enough people. I can't do your thing. That to me just is not acceptable.
is it fair to say that from a WCAT point of view, WCAT as an organization should be looking at a future where there is no income from viewers?
There's no cable franchise income?
Yeah. Especially if the national bills pass, that's, you know, Verizon and Comcast have been, you know, chomping at the bit to get rid of that, even though it didn't affect their businesses in any way. But they've been chomping at the bit for decades to get rid of that. So now, what's the answer?
Well, I mean, I'll take a stab at that and say, public meetings gotta be public. So they're either remote or hybrid or whatever it is, depending on the city or town. So if it's not CAT doing those, it's gonna fall to the town to have.
To put
People-
something together and fund it?
Absolutely. And that's why when you hear, and I don't wanna get off on a tangent here, but that's when you hear the streamers say, you know, we're just passing the tax along to the consumer. Yeah, but you don't think your taxes are gonna go up if the town has to pick up 100% of what's going on for meetings and all of that? And that's pretty expensive and time consuming. So it's gonna get passed along one way or the other. But if it gets taken away, the town's still gonna have to provide access.
Or not? Is there,
I don't see
Steve,
if
do
you-
you see the town benefiting in any way, shape, or form from access disappearing?
From access disappearing?
Mhm.
No. We don't benefit from that.
It's definitely negative side.
Definitely negative, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in this day and age, I mean, people want to see every meeting,
This is kind of,
including this one.
this is kind of what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
We go back to the log cabin, we're all face to face.
That's right. In fact, years ago, when even the item didn't come to cover it, they just told them what to put in the next day. The good old days. I do have a budget question, if I can, I don't know what kind of, so when I look at the FY '24 operating budget, thank you, Paul, for sending that for us to look at. It shows a loss of 86 and some change, based on your calculations.
86.
86,000.
86,000.
86,000.
86,000
Yeah.
and change. So for me to analyze that, I need to see a breakdown on the expense side. I pretty much, I understand the income side, but I need to see a breakdown on the expense side, kind of like we do for the finance committee and for the town council. Break down each budget by name, by category, benefit cost, all that stuff. So that would be helpful for me to look at that, and I assume for the rest of the board members. The other thing that is interesting to me is that if we had this, and we really don't know if this is true or not, right? If we had the $100,000 from the streaming bill as increasing our income of fiscal year 24, if that formula works out, we are slightly in the black. So is there a light at the end of the tunnel? I don't know. You don't seem to think so.
I'm not taking a position either way. I wanna see and hear. I know what's happening in my industry, and I know what's happening in general. And in general, it's always getting harder to keep organizations, media organizations going. Okay?
I agree with that.
All
But
right. And again, I go back to maybe part of the solution, Ian, and this is something, possibly for you and Paul to raise with the board, is to start taking a look at how GBH does it and how, and granted, they are the largest, most powerful in the PBS system, but every other station in the PBS system follows that model. Some are bigger, some are smaller, depending on the areas that they serve. Okay, if you have a station out in the middle of Kansas, it's not going to be bringing in the bucks. The question is, how does GBH bring it in? It's grants, it's sponsorships, it's whatever.
Telephone campaign.
Okay, telephone
there's no
campaigns.
one item that's gonna be a panacea.
No,
in
there
this
isn't.
work.
It's going to have
So
to
I
be a
think-
conglomeration of things, I think.
Fingers crossed, maybe there's some streaming.
Okay, on the one hand, WCAT is going to have to change its business model, and with the assumption that franchise fee doesn't even exist. This is what I'm suggesting, you have it maybe for the foreseeable decade. But what happens if the spigot is turned off? So if you start working toward that goal of the spigot is off, now what do we do as an organization? That might help that. The other side is now the town, okay, and this is where it gets kind of wiggly, and you might want to look at how GBH handles things like this. I'm not sure, because it's been a while since I've been acquainted with the people there, but is it fair to say that the town might or might not have to budget fees for certain coverages, such as school sports, which was never a part of WCAT's brief when I was on the board and I was a member years ago, or anything else like that? Should the town be part of that overall financial structure, Steve? And because it is a 501c3, it's not a town government agency. Should it be treated in that sense?
But David, one thought I have is that, well, I may see it going in that direction based on all the factors we've discussed. At least, I would, right now, for example, it looks to me like our ARPA funding is kind of not really flowing through the system yet.
It's reflected in the ARPA funding that was received of 137,000 last year. Because it was received last year, it was recorded as income in fiscal 23.
Right.
While we did make a request for the ARPA funds to be made available to address future funding sources, that was not approved. So we have no budget value in our revenue for ARPA funding.
Right, but the ARPA funds that you have received in cash, for example, when I look at the statement of activities, June 30th, 23, we had net assets beginning of the year 692. We had 890 at the end of the year. That's almost a couple 100,000 increase. And when I look at the line items, I see Town of Wakefield American Rescue Plan. I see some of it in operating and some of it in capital.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's been expended. I mean, if we also have
So I
400,000.
think,
Oh, in
cash,
terms of our financial reserves,
correct.
but in terms of our profitability,
Right.
that period showed that we
We're
were
talking
profitable.
balance sheet versus income statement.
That's right.
now.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that we should talk about as a committee. We do have, we had an increase in our net assets last year, not only because of the ARPA funding, but because of the additional video production work. So those were all things that were pluses that added to our reserves. Our operating reserves are somewhere in the $400,000 range, and we're looking at right here.
I think to speak to the capital, though, it shows up as a net asset because we bought equipment which has a value to it. That capital for ARPA was part of our expense for gear that we used for the hybrid meetings.
Right.
And that was spent before we got the ARPA.
Just to get into the accounting a little bit, right now, Paul, as of recent time, today, last week, whenever the most recent numbers are in your head, what is the balance? I think we have a balance of 400 something showing at some point for the reserves that are with Ameriprise. Or do you know what the number is there, and do you know how that compares to basically other cash that's not with Ameriprise?
Yes. So we can talk about, and we should talk about the total cash assets, including our
Right.
investments.
And I understand reserves. I'm not saying this is all money to be spent tomorrow.
Right. So, as you see from the statement of activity, as we were saying, our operating assets increased by $93,000, bringing us to $519,000. We're looking at a budget which is a loss of $86,000. So now we're going to go back to the 400,000 that we had essentially at the beginning. So, one of the solutions is you don't need any money, you just need to spend down your reserve, which I would say is not a good move, just because the reserves are there for, a rainy day. You need to be able to operate, and we've always tried to operate on a break-even basis. But to answer your specific question, Mike, on the breakdown, let me just call that up for you.
While you're doing that, Paul, Steve, I'll send you that one page if you want it on the projections, what streaming might.
That'd be great. That'd be helpful.
I'll get that up to you.
Okay, so based on our audited financial statements as of June 30th, and things have changed a little bit since then, primarily have gone down as we've been operating at a loss for a few months. We had this has been the audited financial statements, which I can certainly provide to the committee members as needed. Our total cash and investments, which fits into two buckets, the operating cash and investments and the capital cash investments, is about $850,000 at the end of June. 404,000 is the investments, which does include about $100,000 worth of CDs, with the rest in conservative mutual stock and bond portfolios, and cash of about 445,000. I think I can go to another schedule. That
Seems
will
like a
split.
fair amount of cash to be running with, for this size operation.
So let me sort of break that down into these two pieces, and then I can follow up with that second question. Let's see, it should be, it's going to be on an appendix, so if bear with me, I'll have that for you in a moment.
So while you're looking at that, if I do a very rough calculation, it looks like there are total cash reserves, whether they're in operation or capital, whatever, of roughly 200% of operating expenses, maybe a little bit less. 850K with operating expenses of 500 a year. So it's not 200, but close.
Right,
Is
so you're comparing the reserves for two categories, capital and operating,
Yeah.
with the numbers there, which are strictly operating.
Right, exactly.
So,
Yeah. Right.
that's why I want to be able to sort of, provide a little more clarity on that.
Yeah.
And is
Yeah,
that cash earning anything or? Is it,
The, what's considered as cash, and now I have the breakdown to provide, the committee. The capital cash is 185,000, and the investments are 130,000 in capital. So you have 316,000 is the total amount of capital cash and investments, leaving the operating cash balance of just under 260,000 in cash and about 270,000 in investments. So, we're spending, our budget is 400,000, close to $500,000 annually. So our cash balance at the end of the year was there to fund the business. So you can look at it and say, we got about half a year of expenses covered when you start the year, is one way to look at it.
Yeah, I was just trying to drive it, the urgency of the situation, and if we were to go to the town council and say, at some point, we believe that there should be some mechanism of funding because the legislation is all going sideways as for years. The 3-4% or whatever the drop is every year that we can anticipate, assuming that other bill doesn't pass and, the rug isn't entirely pulled out from under. Just trying to get a feel for how urgent is the urgency.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Congress is now comprised. Those bills have a pretty good chance of passing.
Maybe not both houses, though.
Can I jump back to the reserves, just so I get
Yes.
316, the way that you're breaking out, 316 in the capital reserve.
Capital cash.
Capital cash, yeah, capital
Yes.
cash, yeah.
Mhm.
And about 500K in an operating reserve, however it's moved around.
Operating cash.
Operating cash.
Yeah, 500K. So,
Well, cash or reserve, so that's, why is there a distinction, you say operating cash?
because the operating part of the business has liabilities. We have certain liabilities that have been incurred that have not yet been paid for.
Okay,
And
but you also have other income coming in,
of
quarterly income, right? Quarterly, Kevin?
quarterly, we receive quarterly
Yeah.
income that we use to fund our operation.
Right,
So
okay.
that's correct.
Okay, and this quarterly income is from,
From the cable franchise fees that flow
okay,
through
so
the
you're
town.
getting it quarterly now instead of annually, like,
We've been getting it quarterly since
Yeah,
I've
my
been on the board.
Yeah,
correct.
we get it quarterly, so we turn it over quarterly.
okay, because it used to be annually. In fact, I remember when I was first on the board in the late 90s, we wondered whether we would make it to April 1st in November.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're not in that position anymore, but.
No, that
right.
was one of the things that when I left, we had a more sound fiscal plan in place than we did in the early years. But you're going to get that information to Steve, right?
Specifically, but we're talking about the quarterly versus annual.
Yeah.
And we're sharing information we've now talked about of the total cash, how much is operating, how much is capital, and
Mhm.
breaking that down into cash on hand versus investments.
What did we say the investment yield was, or?
Our
roughly?
investment yield is in the 5 to 6% range.
Okay.
As I said, we have a different portfolio allocation for capital versus operating, with the thought that operating, the thought that one of those is likely to be needed sooner than the other. So with that in mind, we have a more conservative allocation. We have been fortunate to have retained Joanne Riley, who's a Wakefield resident, and works for Ameriprise. And with Brian's help, I think I mentioned some of the material that was sent out. We we effectively moved from a situation where all the money had been in CDs to a more prudent approach.
Have operating expenses, this year gone up a significant percentage over last year?
As far as operating expenses are concerned, I can share some information with you on that. So our operating expenses last year were just under, there's around $435,000. We have seen one of the issues that this company has had is that we do not provide our employees with a competitive benefits package. We don't match 401k until you've been here for 2 years. We only allow a $500 payment if you secure health insurance on your own. And if you don't secure health insurance on your own, you're not getting any from the company. So here we are in a situation where we have been talking for many years about the fact that our employees who are working hard are not being paid in a competitive, don't have a competitive benefits package. The board made a decision that we need to correct that in order for us to be able to retain and attract talent. We've lost two important members of our team last year. It was primarily an economic situation. We have included in the budget a $42,000, let me see, just 1 second. The other thing that we have recognized is that, Ian made the point earlier that as an organization, there are many times where we are our programming requirements to meet the town's needs align and don't allow us to be able to cover all these sort of during a normal workday. A lot of overtime is being worked. So we have included for the first time, a relatively modest $8,000 pool for contract help when we have multiple events going on. We have back-to-back Saturdays and Sundays. So that's a new item. So the new items in 2020, in this current year, is $8,000 of an increase for covering events that we don't have otherwise addressed. We have a 401k match that we're proposing to put in place that would be another $8,000. We have a health insurance increase of $25,000 from 0. And that's a partial year implemented during the year. So it's not a full annual number, but in terms of what we're looking at, $25,000 there, and about $1,000 in life insurance to improve that benefit. So if we look at that in the aggregate, I just want to make sure this formula is working here.
So this is the first time health insurance has been offered.
This is the first time health insurance has been budgeted, because we were never in a position that we could afford it. We're losing money. We're seeing decreases, and the board made a decision that our operating expenses are unrealistically low in terms of what another company would have in place to be able to retain and attract talent. So short answer is this is the first year in our fiscal 24 plan.
And is that
And it
for
covers-
full-time employees? I'm sorry.
Okay,
Is that full-time employees?
Full-time employees. Yes, we don't have any part-time employees.
Okay. How many full do we have?
5.
and you said that was for a partial year, so how many months does that 25 cover?
That covers 9 of the 12. And it was put in place as a placeholder because we had not yet reached out to brokers. We have just hired, with Ryan leaving and Ian moving into his position, we've been out there recruiting to replace Ian without a benefits package. So we've been scrambling to get a benefits package in place. So that 25,000 was a placeholder.
All right, if you have a benefits package in place for the new employee, did you make that retroactive for the rest of the employees?
All employees will be offered a benefit program that is consistent and comparable with a standard waiting period to join, like a 90-day waiting period. And all our existing employees have already achieved the 90-day waiting period, so they would be grandfathered in, along with the change in the 401k, so that instead of having to wait 2 years to join the 401k, we've now moved that to 90 days, more consistent with other organizations.
Mhm.
All the existing employees have been here 90 days. They're all
Mhm.
grandfathered in.
But you don't have a bid yet,
We
as
have,
opposed to a budgeted amount.
that's right. Yeah, these are important initiatives of the board and the company that are in process, and we put monies in the budget so that we could remedy this problem.
I just contracted with a broker for the health insurance and others. And because it is the end of the year, he basically said, I will talk to you in January.
Sounds
I hear
about
you.
right.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say, not only just talking about the school, but, you know, when you look at the composition of the staff, you've got, you know, two relatively new guys that can still be picked up for health insurance under their parents. So, you know, when you're looking at, you know, paying rent and buying groceries and everything, you know, even if it's available, and there's a co-payment, obviously, you know, if you're those guys, you gotta be thinking, wait a minute, you know, I'll hang in with my parents if I can. You know, so.
What's the split on the health insurance? Do you guys decide that?
We determined that we would have the employees pay 25%. We looked at other cable stations, we looked at the town of Wakefield, in order to find, to identify what was a reasonable amount there. So if you take out of the annual increase in our budget that is directly related to putting in place benefits should have been there for years, the rest of our expenses are increasing 3%.
That's about half of the projected net loss.
The 43,000,
Yeah.
correct? Yes, exactly.
For me, it would be helpful to see a breakdown on the operating expenses.
Yeah, I think the key thing that you can see there is 90% of our expenses are salaries.
No, I know, but yeah,
So
I'd love to get away with that too, but I gotta give each,
We look at postage.
yeah.
oh, we do too. I'm just saying, in the big picture, you know, we have inflation-based adjustments for everything. Wages are increasing at 4%. So you look at 90% is our salaries, and we can provide that additional information.
All right, so Paul, you're going to provide more up-to-date information on financials.
Right.
Okay.
Much better picture.
So Steve, for what you're looking for, just out of curiosity, are you looking for historical on that salary information?
I mean, I could easily provide last year actual versus the budget. That would be helpful.
That'd be helpful, yeah. Very
Okay,
helpful.
I'll do it that
Yeah,
way.
year over year would be good,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Okay,
The reason I'm asking is because I think, you know, if you went back when the franchise fees were higher, you'd find out that there were longer term, there is, I don't know, I have no idea because I'm not privy to the numbers, nor should I be, but my guess is that salaries going back a few years ago were higher based on more income.
well,
And
they
then
were,
also longevity. I mean,
Yeah.
right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
because the first executive director was here post Warner Amex employment, okay,
Mhm.
for
Was that
14
Rob?
years.
Is that Rob?
No, that was Robert Haig.
Yeah, Robert, Hay, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Haig left. And then Ron Cox took over. He was here for 2 years. And then he left. Tom Stapleton came in and he was still the ED when I left. And then Ryan took his place and now Ian took Ryan's place. And Ryan was in the job, what, 2 years? 3 years? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And Ryan's leaving was specifically because of economic and family.
Yeah. I mean, he also had a hell of a drive.
Mhm.
Nashua Nashua is a great place to go to. My best friend lives in
Can't
Nashua,
get there
but
from here.
it's, yeah, it's a bit of a hike. It's a bit of a hike.
And Adam, I mean, Adam had just had twins and he could not support his family, so he had to. come in with those.
Yeah, now he's closer to home, I understand. So,
Making a wage that can support his family.
okay. So you'll get those figures for the next meeting.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the next meeting.
Perfect. All right. Let's move on to, because I don't want to go too long here. First meeting out. Item 6, relocation to new high school. Cost of move and the cost of building out. Ian, has anyone looked at the numbers for that?
We're trying to, but honestly, and it's the same, I don't wanna call it an excuse, but it's the same expectation. That Lynn Stapleton and Bond are giving, the numbers are all over the place. Things just keep changing from week to week. As far as how much something's going to cost.
What figures are you referring to specifically?
So. We are not looking at anything relating to the physicality of the building, because that is under the building of the town. We are looking at what we would need to outfit it. Until recently, we weren't quite sure how in-depth that was going to be. We did finally get a ruling from the architects and the project managers, that he said it very eloquently. He said, if you turn the building upside down, if it's still in the building, then the building plan in the town would be taking care of that. So that basically means the wiring for non-specific wiring, so that would be Cat 6, power, electrical, plumbing, all of that would be taken care of beyond anything that we needed specifically. So with that, I've been looking and for the specific wiring, which for us would be any specific fiber wiring or any specific SDI cabling or anything like that. I got one quote of 14,000 based on the square footage. Got another quote of 72,000.
It's all over the place.
It's all over the place, it really is. We may be able to do a lot of it ourselves. I mean, we're actually looking at DIYing a lot of what we have to do to mitigate the expenses to us. We've been in an austerity situation here now for 2 years, where we're trying not to overspend on things and trying to find the simplest, cheapest solution to whatever our problem is. At some points, though, you can't do that. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, I cannot get a closed down number yet.
Do you have a low number and a high number?
No.
Okay.
The high number's $1 million. Low number, maybe 300,000. Honestly, the way people are giving me numbers.
All right, so you need some help with this. is what you're
So,
saying.
well, I need to
Yeah.
see everything get a little clearer, and then I can start going to these places and saying, okay, I specifically need this, and this, and this.
Because when WCAT moved into this space, and for those who are new to this space, this was the shop area of the high school. The shop area had gone away because of the Voc school up at the top of the hill. It was no longer necessary. It was empty. And when there was a strange clause in the cable contract at the time that if WCAT had to spend more than $25,000 a year on rent, the high school lost their third. That was taken out on my orders in the subsequent contracts because WCAT was never a signatory to the contract. So its legality was, shall we say, questionable. But it ultimately allowed WCAT to move into this space because WCAT at the time was looking at buying a building which would have cost more than $25,000 a year. And I don't know, were you on the,
I was on
Selectman
the-
at that
I was
time?
on the board of selectmen at the time, yeah.
yeah, so you remember that?
I remember getting the votes to put you in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why WCAT ended up in this space. In fact, Studio A was automotive repair. There was a lift and hole in the ground when we first looked at this as a board.
And anecdotally, I believe the cost for this place was between 300 and 380.
Yes,
Is that your
Yes.
memory, Steve?
I don't remember the cost.
Okay.
it was somewhere in that ballpark that the board voted for at the time.
And that was 25 hours now.
That was 23 years
23
ago.
years ago,
Because the build out was done in 2020 and WCAT moved in here in June of 2021. They had
No.
spent, huh?
2000?
I'm
2000.
sorry, 2000.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You didn't do that during COVID.
Yeah, no, 2000 and 2001, when things were a lot cheaper than they are today. So, and prior to that, WCAT had been housed temporarily in the now long gone Montrose School. But moved out just in time for the police and fire to move in.
But also this was a full build out, whereas hopefully at the high school, you're going into that upside down building that's been built.
Still gonna be a full
I don't
build
know
out.
how
Still gonna be,
built out
will it
this-
still be a full.
Yeah,
board?
that's why I gotta find out whether it's just gonna be a shell.
Yeah.
Or the rooms will be, they'll be sheet rocked and what have you.
Right,
Which means there needs
that-
to be some design consultation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
okay, so that one's TBD.
Yeah,
Okay.
So for the fiber and the STI cables, I don't know if you mentioned other types of cables, like are those things that like what do we think the materials cost for that, or is we just have no idea?
Cables seem to be a little more static. I will say, as an example of it, we were going to replace one of our routers in 2019 and we didn't. It would have cost me then $400. When it started acting up, because we were gonna do it preventatively, but we didn't, and it started acting up in the middle of 21. And we went to look and it was a 6-month wait and it had jumped to $1,400. And it
was that the
now-
post-COVID pricing?
Yeah, and so now I look back at it and I think it's somewhere around 9.
that's back down. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. So that's kind of the problem is going in and having to look at how much we're gonna need, what the distances are and everything else. If you buy bulk, you get better.
Who needs to be involved in figuring out what this is going to cost? You, Ian, and Steve?
Well, it'll be myself and the engineer that we have on retainer. His name is Seth Graham. He runs an independent consulting firm specifically for cable stations and media outlets. And he has done several of these. And so he and I are going through, we actually just finished the discussions with SMMA about the HVAC and we've moved on to the electrical. And the last thing is the plumbing, but there's not too much to do with that.
Right. And they have a square footage
Yes.
parcel or
Yes.
section.
Okay. And really, so for us, it's going to come down to, once they get themselves locked in place, then I can say for sure, okay, this is what I have. Because we started off with a particular size, and then it shrank, and then it expanded. And then I had a section over here as well as over here, and then this went away and it's got bigger again. So I haven't been able to do anything specific until they get their designs
Right.
locked in.
Size-wise, are you looking at an equitable space to what is here now?
Yes. Yes, we've looked at what we're doing and we have reorganized the
Mhm,
portions, like this big area here
mhm,
has been cut back
mhm.
because there's no real use for it,
Mm-hmm.
and to that effect, then we've been able to add a second podcast room.
Studio, yeah.
We've put a little bit more in the studio so that now we can have a full round view of tables should somebody like planning committee want to use the space.
Mhm.
It won't be nearly as jammed in as it can be, as I'm sure you both are aware. So we've expanded that to a set.
Does that include the space you have across the hall?
So that space was included. We did in the second most recent designs, we did have a second space across the hall. But the school found that they were desperately short of records keeping. So they asked us, do you mind? I said, no, we can make do with what we've got here, because they did add some square footage to our overall central point. So I wasn't gonna quibble about that. They've been very generous with us, and we've got, as you said, we have an equitable amount of space to do what we need to do. And quite frankly, a lot of productions now are outside. They're not necessarily in the facility, so we're gonna have enough space.
I think this is an important thing to talk about in the context of capital funding and reserves. So we haven't talked about what we get from the cable companies on an annual basis for capital yet. The answer is 25,000 from one of the contracts, 16,000 from another, and 0 from the third. $40,000 approximately. The past 2 years, our capital spending was about $40,000. We had to actually take out a loan because we needed an expensive piece of equipment, Telview
The
piece of
transmission server.
that we've been holding together by Band-Aids. And we didn't have enough money we didn't want to deplete all of the assets that we had in the current fund. As we went through the cash balances, about 316,000 is capital.
Right.
So the past 2 years, what we brought in, we've spent, so we had to take out a loan. So
Yeah. That's the note payable, 26,000.
exactly, that was to pay for this transmission server. Because we weren't in a position where we could risk an unexpected capital item coming to a head with limited funds. And this $50,000 that I'm referring to, is going to be decreasing, because I think we only have one or two more years of receiving capital under the contract that is in place right now. So while operating at a loss is concerning, the potential cost for the new high school is also
The
probably
move sounds very
a
concerning.
big, that's
Potentially, very
yeah.
concerning.
So again, when we applied for the ARPA money, we put $250,000 out there as a wild ass guess, just to make people realize that we don't have the money to do it and something's gonna be happening, so.
I think it also should be mentioned the timing. Currently, we have one of our contracts up, the longest one, which is 10 years, is gonna be coming up in what, 2 years?
I'm not sure.
And
Is that
Verizon,
Comcast?
which is one of our more lucrative contracts, they have refused to do any contract longer than 5 years. And we are already halfway through it.
And if I remember, they have a 3-year out.
They have a 3-year out, so they can cancel it anytime starting at the end of this year.
And the other thing, too, just to Paul's point about that, not only do they have a 3-year out, but I think on that contract, if you renew a contract and it's less favorable than theirs, they adjust theirs to the least favorable.
Yeah, they have to be all equitable.
Yeah, they have to be all the same.
Right,
Level playing field.
Yeah.
right, right.
So the amount of money that we have coming in it could very easily go very quickly. Which is why we've been, for the past 2 years, trying to hold on to as much as what we've been getting as we can. Because we don't know when this is gonna actually start fluctuating badly.
Might be a dumb question about the funding, but like if Verizon were to do something like, say, we're gonna stop doing cable and we're gonna have like just a streaming service that you put on your TV.
Yeah.
We get nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they could do that, like, okay,
Oh, they can do that. That's their
They're doing it
legal
now.
way out.
yeah.
And that's why streaming is such a danger right now.
So if you buy an internet package and it comes with cable,
Mhm.
that does not count towards us.
Okay.
It has to be a cable
It's
package.
only the cable. I have a Verizon account. What I pay for cable television, a portion goes to WCAT. What I pay for internet connection doesn't.
But if you get an internet account and they give you like the 8 cable add-on,
Yes,
it still doesn't count. Because it's an internet package.
oh, that's a
They're playing-
great
Wait, so
way of
who's-
cheating.
But who's not getting internet with cable TV?
A lot of
A
people,
lot of people aren't now.
more and more people, especially younger people, are
Streaming.
not buying into cable.
Well, no, but I
packages.
mean, like, who would buy cable without internet?
Well, you can't nowadays because the internet service is provided through the same
Yeah, it's the same providers,
server
yeah.
that powers your internet
But
in your
the
home.
way they're marketing it, they market more of it as internet packages.
Okay,
That's
So
their out.
really, what we have is we have all the people who have always had it.
I see.
And that is what as they die, or they move, or
Or if they change service.
change services, because
Yeah.
you know Comcast, we just don't like it anymore, and they go to Verizon.
Yeah.
Depending
Or if
on
they listen
how
to their
they.
kids who say, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
You can save a lot of money every month.
Or the
Exactly.
aging parent you have it for.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Wow.
But we do have, as I think the town well knows, there's a large amount of people in influx coming in. And some of them do want cable, so we do have inflow while still having loss.
But it's a smaller percentage of the whole than it used to be.
It may have slowed down the decline. The more people coming in, it's kind of slowed down the decline. Not as many of them are getting cable, but it's.
Yeah.
Well, it feels
Right.
like
Yeah,
if
no
you're
one fucks
moving,
you,
that's a
no.
good time to change something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And drop cable.
It's kind of hard to know one way or the other.
I mean, I watched my son move into his new home and, you know, he had a smart TV and here he was on his phone. Hooking up the smart TV and all of a sudden, boom, there it was, you know?
Yeah.
There's no cable.
No box.
Verizon cable guy didn't come and put the
There's
box on.
there's no
it.
box.
I said, how does that work? Yeah.
That's all right. I just switched phones and I've got three months of Apple Plus TV coming to me, or Apple TV Plus, and I'm waiting until just the right time to activate that so I can see a series in January through March and then let it die.
Mm.
But anyway, okay, so costs of the move and the build out are
I'm
pending.
gonna set up something for some of the architects, so you and me. I guess.
Well, and for us, really,
Set.
it's, you know, we're doing a great job with the architects and they're getting through to everything, so we have that.
I wanna get you the answer exactly what are you getting,
Yeah.
you know, so we can plan on the other side.
You're working with SMA?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, they've been great. Left field has been great, and it's really just a matter of waiting for them to get everything nailed in.
And there's also, we'll have to come back with this, what is SBA acceptable, what will they fund, what will they don't?
Yeah, and that's been a
I've been-
very big difficulty.
I've been through that battle with them many
Yeah.
times.
Yeah,
Well,
then it'll be
and
up to us to put in the last mile of stuff. And honestly, we're looking at what are we supposed to put in, because our industry is changing right now. Everything's going away from traditional digital analog to Ethernet only. Do we jump that now and put all of the new cabling in, or do we wait? Because if we do now, a lot of the equipment that we currently have that we're using becomes obsoleted and we have to buy new.
what is the expectation, Steve, of completion? 2028, right?
Oh, no,
27, I thought.
no, actually, 27,
27?
Yeah.
So we're only 4 years away.
spring of, January of 27.
Is it going to
That
change
may
in
be
that?
moved, that may be September
Well,
27.
all projects
But-
could go out a little bit, but technologically, do you see that change happening between now and then?
It's already changing.
but do you see that change being complete between now and then?
I see that change being complete and a new change starting. They're going up fast.
Yeah, no, that's true. All the equipment everywhere is changing.
And because of the reason for that is ATSC 3.0, without getting too geekish about this, is. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
is in its.
Half of the table just went to sleep,
Yeah,
okay?
is in its final phase of acceptance by, I can't remember the acronym, but
Yeah.
television sympathy.
Symptom, yeah,
Is
okay,
in final completion of that. They now have 27 pilot stations running.
okay,
I think we have
For-
one in there.
We have one.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's one in the New England area,
okay,
which we were waiting for. So that's a whole new situation to deal with.
okay,
Because that's something that we may actually be able to get involved with. Because that's a fundamentally different technology. It's basically getting television on your smartphone, but over the air. And it's two-way communication.
God, I hate the modern world.
Yeah, so
would we be on a sub-channel or?
I don't know yet. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how we would go about it, if we could, what the barrier to entry is, so all of that stuff. But all the engineers are giving.
As engineers, I want to be,
Yes.
yes.
I've
There's
actually taken
nothing
a look
worse than
at-
seeing a giddy engineer. It's like seeing a giddy accountant.
Yeah, so the Giddy accountant's gonna jump in and say that the cable contracts both expire in 2027. Verizon in February 2027 is a 5-year contract. Comcast in June of 2027 was a 10-year contract. As the Verizon contract only calls for capital funding in the first 3 years of the 5-year period. So our capital funding for Verizon is gonna end very quickly. The Comcast will continue on an annual basis through the end of June of 2027 at 25,000 a year. So of the 40 some odd thousand, we're gonna be losing 16 at some point and be left with 25. So
25,000 doesn't buy you much nowadays.
that's my point. We don't,
They didn't want to give anything,
Yeah.
cable companies.
Mhm.
Well, Verizon has never, historically, when I was on the board and when I was president, Verizon didn't want to give anything at all, even then, and that's the mid-2000s, the first decade, so,
They're
You know,
not gonna be
historically.
they're not gonna be negotiating in the future.
No.
They're gonna be telling us what we get.
yeah, basically. Which,
If anything.
which comes back around to changing how WCAT as an organization functions.
Let me just comment on that for a moment, because there's no way that we can go ahead and say, how are we gonna replace $400,000 of income in the next 2 years? But what we can do, and what we are doing, is, Mass Partnership for Youth gave us $60,000 last year. We've just submitted a Cummings grant application for $95,000 a year. So we're focusing on grants, we're
Good.
focusing on other sources of income.
Mhm.
We formed the strategic planning committee, a subcommittee of our board. Long-term financial health is one of the subcommittees under strategic planning that also included the development of the sponsorship tiers. So we've got corporate sponsorships, but the challenge is with the 5 people we have in place, we don't have anybody who can go out and solicit and market those things. So the key point is we've laid a foundation and have taken specific actions to address the issue, and ultimately, that's the solution. We can't get there overnight, but we're taking steps right now to get there.
Now, when you say corporate sponsorship, so you're talking about corporate sponsorships in the way that PBS, for instance, does it, where they sponsor a particular segment of the operation or the programming, and somehow they get acknowledged for it.
The underwriters.
Yeah, the underwriters, I mean, the
Variation
savings
of
bank is a great
Yeah.
example, we had a multi-tier benefit for the 9,000.
Yep.
If you're the premium level, which they are, their logo goes on the truck. They're underwritten by the savings bank, goes on our most significant program, which is the town council meetings. If you go to a lower tier, you might get the Martin Luther King Day celebration.
Yeah.
So we've structured it in that manner.
What does my show get? Mine and David's show? What do we
You guys are right up there in the platinum area.
get? We're getting nothing.
Yeah, we don't
I
have the
want to hear my
sponsorship.
time, right?
It would be nice to be able to open the show, proudly supported by X,
That's right. So right now we have one sponsor, the savings bank, is significant.
Okay.
So,
that's-
but we have the ability
Yeah.
to go to the Brothers Deli, and what we really want to do is we don't want to solicit the local businesses that are struggling. And what we really want to do is we want to go to some of the bigger businesses that would love to be visible to Wakefield residents. Jordan's Furniture down the street, Subaru dealer.
Exactly.
Exactly. We're not going to go after the local guys because we
Right.
understand that they're struggling, and these other organizations
Eastern
have.
Bank.
Eastern Bank.
Yeah.
I swear
And,
that
and
Subaru
what's the
dealership
other
is
one
every
that
shop
took
with
over,
PBS.
Rockland?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rockland is in
Rockland.
town.
Town,
You have the co-op.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to hours in the day and then.
Right.
Yeah.
The power that we have and
Well,
quite
maybe,
frankly, what we are trained to do. None of us are grant writers.
but that's where you get a grant writer to sign with WCAT as a client.
So did you have board members do the Cummings grant?
Yes, we did.
Good for you, good for you.
We were successful in our application, letter of interest. Based on that, we were asked to apply. We're applying for the 3-year program. And we've made the point that we want to utilize those funds to do a couple of things. We want to highlight not only businesses in Wakefield, but the surrounding area that are making a dedicated effort to improve opportunities for people with disabilities. We want to try to provide more local information to address the decline and of the local newspapers. And we want to plug that gap, but we think that we can add a lot of value to the community by showcasing some of the good players that are out there.
Okay. All right. Group member comments. Let's go around the table, starting right here.
Well, this has been a very interesting start, I think. I mean, I came into this not knowing much, so I've gotten a good education tonight. So I think it's gonna be a really interesting opportunity to work with this group. One thing I was gonna ask, have you explored with what other community access TV, like if anyone's got any great idea that
So
you've seen
through-
others doing?
yeah, Through mass access, everybody constantly talks, and I try to, I'm starting to, at least, now that I'm in this position, trying to talk to executive directors in other stations and see what everybody's doing. And they're all doing different things, but it really comes down to trying to find other sponsorships, trying to find other means. Some people are going straight to the towns. Lexington is funding their station from the town. Some others, Andover is basically said, okay, we will give you this amount of money and this is the services we expect for it. So they're covering most of the town meetings like planning board and meetings of that size. They are responsible for covering them, recording them, cutting them, and putting them wherever it is that they want.
Ian, are they a 501c3? Or are they a town,
Andover is, yes, Andover is, I don't know what Lexington is.
okay,
But some of those, like Andover, you and I were talking about this, some of it is, if they don't have an outside producer, they're basically not doing any public show. Because
Yeah.
all of their time is spent just covering the government meetings that they gotta cover to get the money.
yes, because they only have, I think, 2 full-timers and a part-time.
Yeah.
A lot of stations are reducing their staff. I know Linfield is now down to 2 people, and I think one of them is actually part-time, I'm not sure about that.
so they're back to where they were in my day.
Yeah. Chelmsford actually is run completely by the town. The educational is in the school, and then the other 2 are a town branch of government, department. many others, some of the other ones, as I said, some of them like Plymouth, where they just basically pooled the money of 6 organizations together. They are not part of any town organization. They are still a 501c3, but now they run the cable systems for 6 towns. And they've been able to, economies of scale, not have to have 2 people in every town to do anything.
Like Gloucester.
Right.
Okay. Okay,
Yep.
Paul?
I'm glad the committee has been formed. I think, Mike, you're right that we don't have an impending crisis, but we do have a reasonably long-term sustainability problem. I'm sure we'll consider multiple ideas. In my opinion, the idea should be one that does not increase the tax bills for the community. Hopefully, we can look to streaming dollars coming in at some point in time and perhaps plug the gap with any remaining ARPA funds that might be available for the town council to allocate as they see fit.
That brings up a question. How long is ARPA going to be around?
A bit longer. We have to commit by the end of 24 and spend by the end of 26.
Okay,
So we don't have to spend by, but we need to commit by. We're down to a couple million that's still remaining to be allocated. But last time we had about 30 million in requests for the first 5 million allocated. So
of course,
It's-
that's
just,
how
you know,
towns work.
it's competitive.
Okay, Steve?
I just want to thank everybody for, serving on this committee. It's another night out, another thing to think about.
And maybe another show down the road.
And maybe another show.
Ian?
And my part of this, should I be saying anything since I'm not technically on this board? Yeah, okay, I guess.
You can speak, my
I can
friend.
speak? Okay. I
We
don't wanna
want to
speak
hear
out of
from
turn.
you.
No.
I
I did call on you.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for putting the time and effort and energy into this. I've been at this station in one way or another for most of my life, and I really believe in what it does for this community. And I think the community would be a bit poorer forward if we did have to shut our doors.
Brian?
Just a quick comment on the town's delegation in varying levels of visibility, but all 3 of those people have been very good to WCAT as far as, sponsoring the bills, co-sponsoring the bills, speaking for them, advocating for us on a regular basis. So those 3, Senator Lewis and Representative Gary Beatty and Donald Wong have been very good in general to work with.
If only we could get Donald to actually sponsor the bill.
As long as he'll support it.
Yeah, that he will do. That he will do.
Well, I think we've covered enough. I don't have anything beyond that. I think we've gotten out to a good start. Our hour-long meeting has gone a little bit longer. We had a lot.
The first meeting is always a lot of material
Yep.
to.
A lot of
Before I catch
material
up,
has
yeah.
already been, tossed out there for us to start digesting. So I think it's a very good kickoff.
Yeah, so a lot of good information. I still had like a couple of like weird questions, like for example, we have a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I have no clue if we get any revenue from that, or if it's like paltry because it's like 100 people watch a stream and they don't give us very
Yeah,
much.
so we have never tried to monetize YouTube for 2 reasons. One, the copyright limitations on YouTube are draconian.
Mhm.
And it is too much of a risk that we will get the 3 strikes that it takes for them to shut the channel down.
Okay.
And as you said, we don't have a whole lot of viewerships that would generate probably more than a couple of $100 a year.
Where do you find most of your online viewerships, on YouTube or on social media?
YouTube wins by about 60%, so it is fairly even. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would say the highest concentrations are the parade, town meeting, and anything to do with athletics.
And I think my other comment was, I think outside of I guess being on the cable committee in this, like, I don't think I like, just as someone who would just like watch like town meetings and things on there, I had no idea that like that this is like, impending budget doom at some point. And so like I sort of wonder if like, I realize that, the Subaru dealership or, Jordan's is probably going to be like a lot more money. But I do wonder if folks, if they knew, if they would chip in more money. Like I've used a donor advised fund like once a year. I just throw some money in a WCAT, but
Well, I know like Cambridge Community TV did a thing last year where they had super low membership rates just to really boost up the numbers. I think it was $5 to become a member, and this year they bumped me up to 20, but it was just trying to get that quantity of people in the door.
And in return for being a member, you have access to utilize all the equipment. So if you go ahead and increase that, and we've got a big influx of people coming in to utilize the equipment, that, there is a downside to that as well.
Well,
I
but
don't, I don't want anything. I just want the content, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna write that down. You're the only one.
Have you ever done a mailing like through CA? I know Gas and Light, sometimes I get mailings from various groups.
We have a newsletter that we send out. We have we have different places where we indicate that you can, what are those things, Ian, where you can make a donation on through is that on the website or
So
Facebook?
we have options on our website, Facebook. Every time we have a live event on Facebook, there's a comment that says, hey, you can help us by donating.
Okay,
We
yeah.
did do a fall campaign last year, though. I
We
just
did.
realized it was pretty
I will say
successful.
that
I was just
As
wondering if
in
you ever,
as in
if you ever did the paper
$3,500.
insert. I was wondering if you
we
ever
did
did
do
that.
that one year.
You did,
and I
How did
think
it work? Did
We
it-
generated somewhere around $2,000.
Yeah, $2,000 or $3,000. So it was,
Yeah,
we
I mean,
thought that
and
was
of course,
successul,
yeah,
but it's not
helps.
not the
No, I'm
solution.
not talking about closing the gap with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
all building
Yeah.
awareness.
Yeah.
But to your point, one of the things that I'm implementing in the coming year is we have made a reorganization of staff that we have here, and one person is now dedicated, not exclusively, but heavily to social media as regarding getting awareness out, hitting all generations, younger generations as well. And another person is actually going to be dedicated to community outreach, to going to organizations and talking to them and letting them know we are here. We're not the stodgy old cable company that would just cover the town council meeting. We're also here. We can help, we can work, we can do any kind of advertising for your organization so that, if the gardening club wanted to do something on social media but doesn't know how, we can help them with it. Things like that. So we are going to be doing a much larger awareness campaign. I am at every chamber event so far, and I'm going to continue to hopefully be able to be there. So long as we don't get so busy that I have to cover a meeting myself.
And I will say to Eden's point, there are right now, I think, 5 high school interns
Yes.
that have been remarkably good. First of all, they're fearless. They have no problem with technology at all, which is great, but last night Ian had to be out at another event. We've got a couple other full-time people. We had 4 kids in the control room, and they're doing it. And one of them is a commentator for sports, but they're just great kids. They came over here voluntarily, actually referred to through the guidance department, I think.
Yeah, we have one of our board members is one of the guidance department in the school, and she has been funneling kids that have expressed an interest in media and production, and they've been coming down here, and we've been shamelessly using.
Yeah, and I bring it up too, because, if you have a situation, where people are putting in a lot of time, you can give somebody a night off because you've got 2 kids coming into the control room to help you get through a meeting. So,
Yeah.
Those, no cost. They do it.
And they're learning and they love it.
Well, and my eldest grandson is tech
Yeah.
director for town administrator
Yes.
report
That's true.
since January.
That's
He's
true.
finishing his
So
first
we wanna get-
season.
We want to get more interest in that. Wakefield has always been a bit of an odd duck as far as people interested in this particular organization.
Years ago, it was really robust and then it went down, so I'm glad to hear that that's.
Years ago, when WCAT was in the Warren School, they had a regular slate of workshops I ran the film style workshop, which is how Ian and I started working together.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, I don't know if that's changed because of the technology change, but it isn't, classes aren't what they used to be as far as getting kids in. You know, a lot of it now, the hands-on stuff is what attracts them.
And for us, we have a difficulty offering classes if we're going to teach them, because again, it's an hours. We would love to work with other people who want to come in and teach them, and maybe that's a revenue source where we contract with somebody out who does a specific kind of class. We offer our facility
Mhm,
and they come in and they do their class in 50-50 split or whatever you have.
mhm,
So those are the types of things that I'm thinking about.
mhm. Anything else?
No, no, nothing else.
Okay.
Kevin's on the line. Kevin, comment.
Kevin, wake up.
Kevin?
Hey.
Your
I'm still
turn.
Here. Find everything very interesting and I'm looking to help out wherever I can. I think this is gonna be a good group. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We need to set. I have some thoughts, but I'm going to wait until we're a little more advanced in our work here before I bring them up. But next meeting, this is the second Wednesday of the month. Do we want to keep it that for next month? That would be January 10th.
I will be out of town, January 10th.
I'll be out of town.
I would also probably not make that as I'm having a knee replacement the day before.
Oh dear,
What about the 17th?
I will be in Texas on work.
Okay, that puts us to the 24th. Because
Or the-
Wednesday
or
is
the
really the
3rd.
quietest evening.
Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday or Thursday? All
Or
right,
the-
let's
or the
look at the
3rd.
Thursdays, the
3rd.
11th, the 18th, or the 25th.
Well, I'm talking, could we consider Wednesday the 3rd? You're gonna be out of town on the 3rd
No, I
also,
will not
Steve?
be out of town.
Yeah.
We
Remember.
could
could do
consider
that.
Wednesday the 3rd. Does that work for everyone?
Works for me.
Yep,
I just have to say, I'm not sure.
That's fine.
I'm not so sure that's enough time, given
Yeah,
the holiday to
As I
get
said, it's less than-
information.
That could be pretty quick.
Okay,
maybe the last week of the month would be better. Give us some
31st?
time.
Or the 24th.
either works for me.
Yeah,
I could do either of those.
24th is good.
All right, let's do the 24th then. Same time, same location.
Same bad channel.
Yeah, for those of
Showing
us of
my
a certain
age.
age. Yep. So, okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
On the 31st, on the 24th.
Yep, very good. You guys have a good night.
You too.
You too.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and
Motion to
Happy New
adjourn,
Year to
Mr. Chairman.
everyone.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Keep it in the 7th.
We are adjourned.